Hi everyone, and welcome to A Stitch in Time. Today is Wednesday, November 17th, 2021, and this is episode 201. My name is Carol. I can be found on Ravelry as Knits and Pearls, and I live in the Fraser Valley of British Columbia, Canada, just a little ways east of Vancouver. It has only been just over a week since I recorded my last episode, but so much has happened, it feels like a lot longer than that. I am going to break with my usual format this episode, and I'm going to talk about life stuff first and knitting second. So if you're not interested in all of the goings on, skip ahead to the knitting segment. I will try and remember to put a timestamp in now that I know how to do that. So fancy. Otherwise, settle in. I've got a lot to talk about. Before I do that, though, I do just want to just send out a ginormous thank you to so many of you who took the time to comment after last week's episode. I so appreciate your congratulations on my 200th episode and all of your kind and supportive comments. I wouldn't do this if you weren't watching, and I do appreciate all of your interaction and support over the years. So I have to confess, I have read all the comments, but I've not yet responded. I think it's probably optimistic to think that I'll manage to do that before this episode goes live, but I'm going to block off some time tomorrow and give you, at the very least, a little heart and a brief comment back, because I really do appreciate that you take the time to talk to me and I want to respond. I also want to say a special welcome to new subscribers. I know there have been a fair number of new subscribers these past couple of weeks, so welcome. Thank you for checking out the podcast. As I always say, I hope you like what you see and that you'll be back. I know how much I enjoy hearing and seeing other crafters talk about their work, so hopefully you enjoy what I have to offer and that you'll be in for the next 200 episodes. All right, so let's get into it. I think I'm going to go chronologically because I kind of have two sort of major bunches of events to talk about, so probably makes the most sense. So first off, I know last episode I mentioned that we were getting ready to go to Vancouver Island the following day to go and visit Cameron's mom. She is 96 years old. She lives in an extended care home in Victoria, not too far from Cameron's brother and his wife. And we unfortunately went a whole year and a half without seeing her thanks to COVID, but we managed to get a visit in this summer, and we have traditionally gone over on the Remembrance Day weekend in the past, and so we planned to do that again. So Thursday was Remembrance Day here, and so Cameron and our daughter Jessica both took Friday off work so that we could have a few days over there. So as I mentioned last time, I was kind of concerned about the ferry situation. Long weekends are always really busy, and I had tried to reserve a spot the week before once we knew what all our plans were, but unfortunately all the reservations were taken. They always allow quite a bit of room for just, show up traffic. I can't think of non-reserved traffic, I guess. And so we knew we might end up having to wait a sailing or two, but we couldn't do anything about it. So that morning we learned that one of the ferries had mechanical issues and had been taken out of service. It was replaced by another vessel, but they had canceled a couple of sailings, including the 6 o'clock sailing. So our odds of getting on just went down by one sailing. Fortunately, both Jessica and Cameron were able to get off work earlier than planned, and so we left about an hour earlier. We left town here at 2 o'clock, and we got to the ferry terminal at about 3:15. Only to learn that we were on the 9 o'clock sailing, and grateful for it because the ferry was already about 90% full by that point. So we were in for a good 5.5 hour wait. Thankfully, on the Vancouver side, there is quite a good selection of restaurants and shops in a kind of a marketplace area. So there were things to look at, and convenient washrooms, and lots of things to choose from for dinner. The Victoria side, that is just limited to sort of a cafeteria style restaurant, and that's about it. So at least we picked the right side that to be delayed on. So there were some delays on the sailing before ours, but our ferry arrived just in time, or just when it was supposed to. Just it was on time. I'm not stopping and editing. I'm just going on. Bear with me. So yes, we got over there when we were supposed to, and my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, waited up for us, and takes just over an hour and a half to travel from one side to the other, and about 20 minutes or so of driving to get to their place. So it was 11 o'clock by the time we got there. Anyway, we had a really nice weekend. We visited Cameron's mom a couple of times. She lives in a place that was set up for veterans. So most of the residents, including her, are veterans. So they had quite a few activities planned for last week to commemorate Remembrance Day. Unfortunately, the public wasn't able to attend their Remembrance Day ceremony as it usually is because of COVID-19, but we did go see her in the afternoon. So that was good. It had been 3 years since our daughter had been able to see her, so she was really glad for the chance to get over and visit and see her grandmother. While we were there, the first morning, Jessica and I took a really nice sort of walk/hike up to the hill behind where my brother-in-law and sister-in-law live. It's called Christmas Hill, and when you're at the top, you can get quite a good viewpoint of the surrounding area. So it was misting a little when we started. It cleared up for a while, and then it started to rain again, but we didn't let that get us down, and we had a really, really nice walk. While we were there, we also drove Jessica around the old neighborhood where my husband grew up. She hadn't seen that for quite a while. And we also drove up island a little ways to where my husband's father is buried. He was also a vet, and the little cemetery is buried in a church cemetery of what's now a heritage site. The church no longer operates, but somebody, I'm not sure who it is, goes around every Remembrance Day, puts a little white cross on all the veterans' graves with a poppy on it and a cedar, sprig of cedar. It was very nice. So we quite often do this on Remembrance Day weekends. Go to Victoria, visit his mom, and then go up to visit his dad. So we also, Jessica and I, were delighted to go to Beehive Wool Shop, downtown Victoria. Haven't been there for a couple of years because of the pandemic, and so it was fun to be able to go and shop in person again, and came home with a few goodies, which I'll share with you a little bit later. We also went out for lunch at a pub one day, and that was really nice, and yeah, just had a very good weekend. So we had decided to come home Saturday, both to avoid excessive ferry traffic and also just to give Cameron and Jessica both a day at home to, before they went back to work on Monday. So we aimed for the 11 o'clock ferry, got it no problem, and we were home at about 2 o'clock. We opted not to go grocery shopping that afternoon, which maybe we should have, but we just decided to just take it easy the rest of the day and just have just a nice Saturday night at home, cozy Saturday night at home. So I think it had started raining by then. We knew we were in for a lot of rain, and this is where the second part of the story, or second part of the goings on, come in. So where I live on the west coast of British Columbia, we are susceptible to, put it this way, people call it the wet coast. We get a lot of rain, and we're used to it. And this fall especially, I know I've mentioned it before, we seem to have had quite a bit of rain. And what we often get at this time of year are what the weather forecasters used to always refer to as a pineapple express. And now there's this, it's not a new term, but it's being used now, they call it now an atmospheric river. So basically what it is, it's warm, moist air that comes from the tropics and subtropics towards the poles, and then it just drops. And we ended up having in our area and much of the lower part of the province, about as much rain in a couple of days as we usually get in the entire month of November. So here in Chilliwack, where I live, we had almost 220 millimeters of rain in, I think, just over 2 days. And so that is, I think, about 8.5 inches. So, our systems are just not made to cope with that much rain at once. And as you may have seen on the news, there was widespread flooding. Many roads were washed out or washed away. And yeah, it's just been a time. Sadly, at least one woman was killed in a mudslide. There are a couple of other people in that same slide that are missing, and possibly more. It's unprecedented. We are completely cut off. Well, we are cut off from the interior of the province, and they are cut off from us because every highway has had some sort of incident, many of them multiple incidents, including some areas where the entire road has just been washed away. And I don't mean that there's some debris left. I mean the highway snapped and is gone, and there's a gap between one part and the other. I just learned before recording that apparently there's a rail bridge that has failed, and there's been a couple of derailments. Going west, there is an area between the next town over called Abbotsford, or next city, I guess, Abbotsford and Chilliwack. There's an area they call the Sumas Prairie. And the Sumas Prairie used to be a lake, and it was drained and is kept drained by a series of canals and pumps. And the Nooksack River from the south, from Bellingham, or from Washington, near Bellingham, it flows close to the border, and it overran its banks. And as a result, between all the rain we had on all of our creeks and rivers overflowing, and there, the Sumas Prairie has flooded. The highway connecting us with Abbotsford is completely flooded. Thankfully, Cameron came home Monday morning from work. Well, he came into town to work before the highway was completely flooded. They were going to close it at 7 o'clock that night, but it became impassable before then. They had to close it sooner. So there are a number of people who are stuck on that side of the world, and where we are, we're kind of cut off from everything. So we live on the valley floor, and we back onto farmland, and we have had some flooding in our backyard before. This was the worst. When I went to bed Monday night, after the rain had stopped, the water had come only about halfway up our backyard. So I was feeling pretty good about things because I'd been watching it anxiously all day Monday. Monday was useless. I couldn't settle to anything. I just kept looking out the window, and it was just bucketing down. There was just relentless rain for more than 2 days. And yeah, when I went to bed, it was only halfway up the yard, and so I was feeling good about things. So when I got up yesterday morning, I opened up the blinds and was curious to see how much the water would have receded, and instead found that it had crept closer. Our next door neighbor's backyard, they're a little bit lower than we are. Their entire backyard was flooded, as was the area between our house and their house. Again, they're a little bit lower, so the water was on their side more or less. I mean, we had some in our yard too, but thankfully it had a ways to go before it reached their foundation. They don't have a basement, and they sort of have a bit of a raised foundation, so they were okay. I saw one of the renters yesterday morning. He said they were fine, but he was taking his dog out to a dog park so it could run around, because usually it's out in the backyard, and there was no backyard. Our neighbors across the street, their house is lower. If you can imagine, the sidewalk is in front, and then there's a slope down towards their house. Their entire yard flooded. Was right up to the top of the foundation, right up to their doors. Thankfully, the water did not come in the house, but they could hear it running under the foundation. They could hear it when they put the furnace on, so they had to turn the furnace off because it had water in the ducting. Thankfully, they do have a wood stove, so they were able to keep warm. And so they had a pump going there. I had called over, I guess it was Monday. No, I guess it was only just yesterday morning. Yeah, yesterday morning. And she said they were fine, and that she was going to call the insurance company. So someone arrived soon after with a pump, started pumping them out. A couple of doors over from us. They're lower than the houses that they sit between. They had a pump going pretty well all day and overnight. Again, our storm sewers were backed up. We had some flooding on our road, so they closed our block. It was still closed this morning, but I think it might be open now because I'm seeing more traffic going by. Thankfully, this crazy weather was followed by a beautiful sunny day yesterday, and then it was supposed to be overcast today, but it's been sunny again, and so it has allowed the water to recede quite a bit. And our neighbors across the street, they've had a really powerful pump going all day today, and their yard is much, much better. I took a walk this morning, and interestingly, most places it just looked the same, but there were a few houses that I passed that had hoses coming out of their basements with water coming out, so there obviously was some flooding in other places. One of the roads that I walk down sometimes was still a little bit flooded. They had closed it. Yeah, you know, it could have been a lot worse. We've been here over 30 years. This is the worst we've seen. It is good to know that we can weather a storm like this. We're very grateful. We had our roof done last fall and new gutters put on this year. I'm sure that brought us some peace of mind, put it that way. So yeah, you know, we were asked not to do laundry, not to use a lot of water unnecessarily, because all the drainage is just, you know, the systems were stressed to the max. So usually I do laundry on Monday mornings. I finally have gotten to it today, and I even put off having a shower for a couple of days just to prevent that, because our drains outside of our place here were overflowing for the better part of a couple of days, so I didn't want to press our luck. Sponge baths, you know, I made do with sponge baths. So I took various footage of our backyard and our neighbors, and so I don't even remember what I have or what I said. I took some photographs too, so I'm going to put together a little something and put it here, and then when that's all done, I'll come back and talk about knitting, because this is a knitting podcast after all. It's Tuesday morning, and this is what our yard looks like after 2 days of a steady downpour. You can probably hear the pump from the neighbors a couple of doors over. It has been going non-stop since about noon yesterday. When I woke up yesterday morning, the water was back by the shed, and it had just cleared the shed pad. By the time we went to bed last night, the water was probably a little more than halfway up the yard. And when I woke up this morning, I looked out the window expecting to see that the water would have receded at least somewhat, and instead it had encroached even further towards the house. But thankfully, we remain high and dry. The shed is a different story, but fortunately there's nothing in there that should suffer much damage. Just some patio furniture, which is supposed to get wet anyway, the lawnmower, fountain. The only thing is I do have a bag of potting soil and some garden sand in there too, which might make a little bit of a mess, but as soon as the water recedes, we'll open that all up and get it cleaned out. So I'm going to take you for a little walk this way across our deck. You can see that our bird feeder is now standing in a pool of water. Our neighbor's yard next door is completely flooded. So it's spilled over here to our patio pad, and then there is some flooding between the two houses. But as I said, thankfully did not reach the foundation, so we should be fine unless things change drastically. I'm going to take you up to the upper deck and give you more of a bird's eye view. So here's our yard from up above. You can see that the fields behind us are completely flooded. This is the neighbor next door. Talked to him this morning. They're fine inside, so that's good news. And over this way. to our right. So this is the most flooded our yard has ever been in over 30 years of living here. So hopefully if we survive this, we can survive the next one. This is our street at the moment. As you can see, it's quite flooded. That water is coming from our neighbor who's pumping out their yard, and the storm drain is completely full. Fortunately, our neighbors across the street also experienced severe flooding, but their house is dry. That's the main thing. And they've now closed our road to traffic. It is Wednesday morning, and as you can see, our yard's been transformed into a bit of an ice rink. We had a heavy frost overnight, and even though the frost itself has melted, you can see some of the water is still frozen. What you can also see is that the water has receded quite a bit since yesterday. Even as late as yesterday evening, the water was up over the corner of that patio there, so it has now receded all the way back behind the garden bed, about halfway up the yard, I guess. So that is good news. You can also see it so far. It's a pretty nice day. Some fresh snow on the mountains, and the birds are happy. I made sure to put out plenty of food and suet for them because their foraging grounds, of course, in a lot of places are still covered with water. Going to walk over here. It looks like the water from between the houses has also disappeared, so that's good news. Let's see here. Oh yeah, this path yesterday was fully covered, as was the area beside it in our neighbor's yard, so that is good news for sure. I'm recording this footage just before I sit down to record today's episode. And as you can see, the water has receded quite a bit since this morning. So it continues to go in the right direction, which is good. We're not able yet to get into our shed and see what damage might have taken place in there, but hopefully that won't be too long. And whatever it is, we can deal with it. At least it wasn't our house. Here's a look at our neighbor's house across the street. This morning, their yard was completely filled with water all the way up to the top of the foundations. Well, really all the way up to the front door. Around the back there, it was all flooded. So they were pumping quite aggressively this morning. Looks like they're continuing to do so. And it's nice to see their driveway and their front yard emerging again. Thankfully, the water did not make it into their house, into their living quarters. So that's the good news. One advantage of driving to and from the ferry and waiting in line for a very, very, very long time is that I had a lot of time to knit. And on the way home, I knit the final stitches into my Hunter's Moon socks. I kitchenered the toes either later that night or the next morning, can't quite remember, but in any case, I have a new finished pair of socks, and here they are. So they are knit from Fiber Nymph Dye Works Inversibles, and as you can see, you get two coordinating 50-gram skeins that feature two colors. So this is the Gothic Purple and Harvest Moon colorway. I won this yarn as part of the Fiber Nymph Dye Works Nature Make-Along, and decided it would be fitting to use it for the final quarter. The theme for that was sky, so Harvest Moon fit nicely into that. But I called them my Hunter's Moon socks because I started them right around the Hunter's Moon. So nothing too fancy, 2x2 rib, top down stockinette socks, traditional heel flap gusset, rounded toe on my usual 2mm needle. I did do a bit of yarn management on these. Once I finished the heel turn, I broke the yarn, and then I took yarn from the other end of the ball. So here I had finished the heel turn with the gold, and then I began again and knit a full stripe of gold and knit the rest of the sock from the other end of the ball so that it wouldn't interrupt the striping sequence, or I wouldn't end up with really thin gold stripes in the front. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. You would never know the stripe that resulted was almost as wide as the regular stripe would have been. So very happy with how those turned out. I have not washed and blocked them, but you know, it's just a plain sock. It doesn't require a whole lot of blocking. The only time I ever block my socks anyway is to take pictures and show them off. Other than that, I just lay them out over a drying rack. So I guess I might block them just to take the photos, but for Ravelry. Speaking of which, I am so behind on so many pictures. I have a whole stack of knitwear that needs photographing, and I just never seem to find the right time to do it. And when I want to do it, the weather's crap and the light's horrible. So one of these days. In any case, there we go. I have a finished project. So I had taken some extra sock yarn with me just in case I finished my socks over in Victoria, which obviously I didn't. But I had just thrown it in. It still needed to be wound. And not long after we got home on Saturday, our younger son called and asked if he could come over for a little visit. So he did, and I tried so hard not to knit. I had no knitting projects I could really work on at that point. I mean, I had knitting projects, just nothing I could pick up and work on while he was there. And I resolved that I was just going to have to do without it. And then I couldn't stand it any longer. And I had bought a skein of yarn at Beehive that was ready to go. And so I picked it up and cast it on. And it's a Zauberball, which I love knitting with Zauberball. Look how gorgeous those colors are. So wait for the irony. So this is Zauberball Crazy. The color number is 2404, and the German colorway name translates to deep water. So could you have a more perfect yarn? It was a sign of things to come, because at that point it was just raining a little. It wasn't, flooding or anything. So I haven't worked on them a ton, but I did get started. And this, I don't know what it's going to look like once I edit, or once I see it on the actual computer, because on my screen this looks like a very dull blue, and in fact it's a very bright jade green. Both these are shades of very, very bright jade green. More bright like is up here, but a little bit deeper color. So it's just always weird how colors show up on screen. Maybe if I bring it closer. No. Anyway, it is gorgeous and rich. Maybe it shows up better there. Kind of. It's kind of. Still probably brighter than what you're seeing. Anyway, it's gorgeous and I love it. So we'll see when these get done. These will just be my, TV watching, riding in a car, visiting kind of socks. So no rush for those. But yeah, when I learned the colorway name, I just thought, how perfect is that? One thing I was happy to get knitting on again once I got home was my new sweater called Knit Me Baby One More Time by Mary Annarella. So as I showed you last episode, this is what the sweater looks like. I am knitting a version that's going to look very much like that with the striping, only my colors are different. This is a project by Judy Knits a Lot Now on Ravelry. When I saw that, I knew what I wanted to do. So, when we left for Victoria, I was just at the point where it was time to separate for the sleeves. And in fact, I had hoped to have about an hour or so to work on it that afternoon before we left. I was getting everything packed and everything ready to go, and then we ended up leaving early, so I didn't get to do that, so I had to leave it behind, but it was something to look forward to working on when I got back. So I guess I'll show it to you and then I'll tell you about the yarn. So there it is, coming along. So I'm done with the striping, and now there's just lots of stockinette with this speckled yarn. This has been a really interesting construction. You start with the back, you pick up along what are more or less the shoulder seams, you work down, and then you work sleeve, like set-in type sleeves, right into your knitting as you go. Do these contiguous set-in sleeves, which are brilliant. I did try it on after I separated and knit for a bit. It does seem to fit quite well. I did not swatch. I just based my needle size and sweater size off of several other fingering weight sweaters that I have knit and that I like the way they fit. So I'm hoping that that doesn't come back to bite me, but I'm not sure that I would have changed anything anyway as far as needle size and sweater size go. So there it is. As you know, I'm drawn to these colors. You can see the navy and the green and the white in what I'm wearing too. The yarns, they are from a British Columbian yarn dyer called All Points North. The olive is called Olive U, like this. And as you can see, it's the Sweet Sock, which is 80% superwash merino and 20% nylon. It's a fingering weight. I am alternating two skeins of the Raindrops colorway because they are quite different. One's quite a bit more speckled than the other. Again, how ironic, Raindrops colorway, considering what's been happening. And then I thought this was kind of funny too, because this colorway, the navy, is called Anchors Away. My brother-in-law was teasing me today about letting me know that somebody had a boat and motor for sale that might want to consider that. So enjoying this very much. It's getting into the sort of less exciting part of it. It's a lot of stockinette. There is some waist shaping that is done along each side, but I'm going to change it, as I almost always do, to 25% of the way in from the side seam in the front and a third of the way in from each side on the back, and just have it more like darts, I guess. It just fits better for me, and I just like the way it looks. So yeah, we plugging away on that for a while. So that is it for all the projects I have going as far as knitting goes. I am going to talk a little bit about a quilting project in a bit, but I thought I would share my acquisitions with you first from Beehive. So the Zauberball Crazy, and I'm really glad I picked that one up. I didn't go too crazy. Here's the bag. Beehive. Again, with these colors, this caught my eye. I've never used this yarn before. Pro Lana. It's called Golden Sock Seelbach. I don't know if you say that right. Nothing fancy, just a colorway number 559. So when I finish my sweater, I can have a pair of socks to match, or I guess I could wear it with that too. They had a sample pair of socks made up in this yarn, and I really liked them. The Leo and Roxy. This is their 80/20 sock, and this colorway is called Patches to Patches. And it's just this very neutral background with little, when you knit, you just get little teeny lines of all these different colors. And it's really pretty, very subtle. And then every time I go into Beehive, I think about doing this, and I finally did it. So I have a sweater's quantities worth of Brooklyn Tweed Loft, which is the fingering weight in this, and I think this is a bottle, or I knew it till I had to open my mouth and say it. Button jar, that's it. And I've often thought about getting some coordinating colors to do a colorwork sweater with it. So this time I did. I picked up these two colorways. So this one is called Tartan. This one is called Hayloft. Let's see. I guess I've got a wound up skein. That might be a better way to show you the... I had done a project with this before that didn't really come out how I liked, and so I had undone it and washed all the yarns. I have lots of little bits there, but here's more or less a skein's worth. So let's see if that helps. There's with the blue. I love this gold with it. And it has flecks of blue and gold in it. I don't know if you can tell. Definitely in the store, the one they had in the store, it was very obvious. This is a little bit more subtle. But I liked those. And then I also have a few scraps of, or not scraps, but leftovers of a couple of, well, 3 other colors. So I have this blue here. I'm just going to grab out the tags because I don't remember what they're called. This is, yeah, okay, hang on. So I have, I'm just going to hold up this color here. So this one is called Almanac. This one is called Storm Cloud. And then this one, just a little bit left, is called Thistle. So I'm thinking between, let's see if I can do this. It's always a challenge. Maybe what I want to do is put that one, nah, that's not gonna work. If I had these in my left hand, I could then put these on my right. So I'll just hold them there. These 2 blues are really not that much like. You can see a difference there. Again, the blues are not being captured quite as well as the real thing. But there's some colors that definitely can work together. I really actually like the purple, the green, and the gold that I see there. It's the first time I've actually pulled them out and really looked at them together. So yeah, hopefully I can find a project that makes use of at least some of these together, do a colorwork sweater. I do like the Loft. It's not really, it's I guess a little bit scratchy, not really. And it's I know a lot of people are not thrilled with it because it's quite a loosely spun and it does break like really easily. But when you knit it together, you know, I think it holds up fine, and it definitely does have a really, just a really nice lightness to it. So those were my acquisitions. So like I said, I didn't go too crazy. Oh, I did also get a makings magazine or book, really, that my daughter wants. So I bought that for her for Christmas. I'm not sure if she's watching because she said she wasn't going to, because it reminds me, I actually forgot to get a picture. I've started weaving her scarf, so maybe I'll talk about that next week. I worked up the loom this weekend and just barely started weaving her scarf. She knows she's getting the book and she knows she's getting the scarf, so I'm not ruining any surprises in that sense. And I think she said she's going to avoid watching so that she doesn't get spoiled before Christmas. So as I mentioned, I am working on, or just about to start, a quilting project. I guess I did technically start because I cut out pieces for it. So I bought some, just gonna get my iPad open here because I've got a photo on there to show you. Actually, I meant to show this earlier. This is the, right in the middle there, that's the highway that my husband drives to work from our town to the next one. So yeah, that's the Sumas Prairie area. It is just, totally inundated. Now, this was taken yesterday, so maybe it's better by now. That gives you a look too. Pretty awful. It's a real farming area, so a lot of farmers didn't want to leave their farms behind, but the area has been evacuated. And hopefully the people will be able to go home again soon. Okay, so now here's what I'm making. I bought some holiday fabrics, I think a couple of years ago, maybe it was last year. Never got around to using them. It is the it's called the Morris Holiday Collection by Moda, and the fabrics are based on fabrics from the Victoria and Albert archives, they say. So I had bought a jelly roll, which are 2.5-inch strips. I bought, I don't have it here, I bought the charm pack, which is 5-inch squares, and I bought some yardage, 2 different yardages. One was in this pattern, a large quantity. My initial plan was to make a quilt, and I've changed my mind, and I'm going to do a tree skirt and some placemats, maybe a table runner. So I have a lot of this fabric, and then my binding fabric, see if I can spot one, is I think it's this one here, if not one of that's very similar. So lots of pretty patterns in here. And what I really liked about this collection is that my living room and kitchen are both have a lot of blue in them. So when you add your Christmas fabrics, Christmas things are always red and green. What I liked about this is that this collection featured a lot of blues in them, or blues in it, I should say. And so I thought that would be a perfect thing to use for our house. So I don't even know how this came to my site, but it might have been on a YouTube video actually that I saw, because there is a YouTube video for it. Anyway, this is the Bargello tree skirt. Let's see, that's better light. I'm trying to get it. Sorry, it's got the light from the window that's interfering. Plus the light from this. Oh dear, I thought it would be better on the iPad and anything else. Okay, I think that gives you an idea. You can see how the colors go around in a spiral. So they've done theirs in red, white, and green. I've sort of broken mine down into red, green, and blue. And you do it with a Quilt As You Go Christmas tree skirt by, what's her name? June Taylor. So you buy the batting and it has all the tree skirt drawn out on it and all the wedges that you need to attach. And it also comes with a plastic template to cut out your wedges with. So what you do is you sew fabrics together. And this, they've shown this on their video, so I'm not going to worry about copyright here. This is just a very light photocopy of it, but you create these wedges with your 2.5-inch strips. So very specific layouts for your various wedges. There are 16 of them. And then once you sew all those together, you cut out the wedges with a template and then you sew them together. So I ran into a bit of an issue because the original is done with just meterage of fabric or yardage, and so you have a 12, I think it is, different colors, and you have so many strips of each pattern, where I just had the jelly roll. So what I did is I put together strips that were very similar in color, and I designated them for this particular color. So if I needed two strips of this particular red fabric, I used 2 different fabrics that were similar. So I don't know if that makes sense. So it's not going to look exactly the same. I don't even know how it's going to turn out, but I figured out which fabrics, and then last night I cut up all the different sizes that I needed, and then I went around and pinned together in order all of the fabrics I needed for each wedge. And so I have marked them. That's number 1. So my next job is to sew all my wedges, and then once they're sewn and I get my batting, then I can put it together. It's hard to say when that's going to happen. We really are dealing with even greater supply chain issues, than we were before. I mean, everybody, sorry, jiggle camera there. Everybody is facing the same thing, the supply chain issues. And now, we can't at the moment get things from the interior or across Canada by truck or by rail. And some of those highways are going to take quite a long time to fix. I guess if it's coming in by air, well, at the moment, I can't get anything delivered to my house that, comes into Vancouver because there's no transportation. But once the highway reopens after the flooding recedes, then we'll be able to do that. For instance, I just ordered something yesterday that comes from about 45 minutes away. And of course it can't get here at the moment, but that, at least from the west, it's temporary. From the east, it's going to be a while before it all gets fixed. Looking ahead to Christmas, we're not even sure if our mom is going to be able to come visit, unless she gets a ride to the nearest bigger city and takes a plane. in which case, she could come, but it might be another Christmas without her. Last year, because of COVID-19, she didn't come for Christmas, and it could be the same this year. So I guess I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but that's definitely a possibility. That is it for all the knitting and crafting content. So that just leaves me with something good. And my something good for this week, I wrote down, we're dry, we're safe, we're healthy. This could have been so much worse. There were a lot of people who are a lot of people who have been evacuated from their homes. The entire city of Merritt was evacuated because the river overflowed. That was one thing too. It wasn't just that we had moist air coming from the Pacific, but it was so warm that it melted a lot of our snowpack, and so the rivers were receiving water not just from the rain falling from the sky, but also from the streams feeding them. So that was like a double whammy. So there's so many people who've lost their homes. At least one person has lost their life. A lot of people will be trying to recover from this for quite a long time, and so I'm just grateful that it wasn't worse than it was, and with the little damage that we might have in our shed, it's doable. So I hope you are dry, safe, and healthy wherever you are. I want to thank you so much, as always, for tuning in, watching. I think I'll be back next week. I always think it's a crapshoot. You just don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next, do you? So take care until the next time I see you. I hope it's very soon, and enjoy your crafting. So thanks for watching. Bye.